Good morning, everybody. This episode of Saturday Conversation on Texas Football is brought to you by the folks over at MyBookie. Make sure you're in the game with MyBookie. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by CJ Vogel and Rod Babers. Happy Saturday to everyone. Happy game day. Let's get it rolling, guys. Longhorns taking on Mississippi State this afternoon, 3:15 at DKR. A game's going to be televised on the SEC network. Guys, I tell you what, the Longhorns are the number one ranked team in the nation right now. They are the team to beat in the SEC, although there's some other games that we're going to talk about today going around, like Georgia, Alabama, A&M, Arkansas, even Oklahoma headed to Auburn this weekend. Really good slate in the SEC. Our eyes right now focused on the one in Austin. Guys, we have to sit here and look at it. Texas's offense versus the Mississippi State defense and vice versa. How do you like this matchup for the Longhorns? Favored by 38.5. Over and under is 62.5. These are ridiculous spreads. I mean, look, you can say what you want, but Texas clearly the betting favorite here today against the Bulldogs. Y'all have any inclination about whether or not you think Texas is going to have any problems with Mississippi State today? Y'all feel pretty good about it. Rod, I'll start with you, buddy.
Yeah, it's a bad time for Mississippi State just because they're at a low point in their program period. They've dealt with a lot of, just a lot of trials, tribulations, turnover there in the last few years. And this is a low point. I heard Paul Feinbaum say and I know Paul Feinbaum can give in to hyperbole, of course, but he said they're the worst team. They might be the worst team in the country. Worst team in the SEC is, I think, more realistic. They just don't necessarily defensively this year. They don't really have many strengths, or if any strength at all, on the defensive side of the ball. And that's a bad situation matched up against a really prolific offense for Texas. They're in the hundreds in almost every major statistical category defensively. But what I think Texas is going to be able to do is get a lot of explosive plays on this Mississippi State defense. They're 130th in 10-plus yard plays allowed, 131st in 10-plus yard rushing plays allowed. And so Texas, I think, will be able to move the football no matter who the starting quarterback is. They'll be able to move the football against them pretty well.
Yeah, I look at this, CJ, and I'm going to post this up here. CJ, give us your take on this Texas offense versus this Mississippi State defense.
Yeah, it starts up front, right? And I think that's where most SEC games will go. It's the trenches that will matter. And right now, defensively, Mississippi State, they don't have many dogs in the trenches right now. Only 4 sacks. Only they're the leading rusher right now for Mississippi State has 6 pressures. Well, we just saw freshman Colin Simmons rack up 6 pressures against the defending national champions by himself in that game. So I don't expect to see a lot of pressure on the quarterback right now. You see them outside of the top 100 in just about every meaningful defensive statistic right now. Points per game, they're very bad. I believe they're 120th in points per drive given up as well. So it kind of gives you an idea of the lack of resistance that they show on a down-to-down basis. It should be another opportunity for the Texas Longhorns to put up a whole bunch of points at home, which we've seen through 3 games already that they've been able to clear 50 points in each game. I expect that to be the case again on Saturday.
What about the Mississippi State offense, starting a brand new starter, true freshman quarterback? The Longhorns defense has been a bright part of this unit so far. What do you think about that, CJ?
Yeah, the one guy, and I mentioned this to Rod earlier in the week, I think the one guy that you really have to hone in on is Kevin Coleman. He was a guy that Sarkisian and the staff recruited back out of St. Louis when he was in high school. And I think when you consider, the talent on each team and which guy could contribute for Texas, which guy could play at the elite D1 level, he's a guy that could do that. Outside of him, who else can? And there's not many on Mississippi State. Of course, when you lose Blake Shapen, the quarterback, the guy that was really trying to hold things together offensively, well, things get a lot more difficult for the Bulldog offense and Jeff Lebby. They are going to, work you with the splits. They're going to go quick. They're going to have tempo. They're going to work alignments and everything that can pose difficult to a defense. We saw that last year with the Oklahoma offense, as obviously, but I don't think they have the talent that will be able to keep up with the Texas scoring offense. And again, on a backup quarterback, I think this Texas defense, those numbers that you see on the left, man, I mean, they might as well stay right there because I don't think they're going to be a lot of points for Mississippi State this weekend.
CJ, I got to ask you, this is my question to, I guess, both to you and Rod. I got to ask y'all about the running back situation at Texas because that is the one point where I'm actually concerned right now. Texas going into this game with two relatively healthy backs, although each of them have been nicked up. Jaden Blue had to sit out a game, but he's considered healthy now. Then he carries the ball 25 times the very next week. Jarrett Gibson has had ankle issues. And then we have 5 guys on the injury list, including 3 that are completely out, including the emergency running back, Velton Gardner. Do we see more Silas Bolden kind of integrated into that run game from a wide receiver standpoint, where they throw a lot of flares and screens and bubbles out to the receivers to kind of take a little bit of that impetus off of the traditional Texas run game? What are y'all's thoughts on that and how Sark is going to negotiate and manage that? Rod, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think that's going to be interesting. Because it's pretty obvious, and Sark even admitted it during the media availability this week, that when he's got Quinn in there, he leans on the early down pass rate. He's not afraid to throw it on early downs with a seasoned veteran quarterback like Quinn. And you could tell from Arch's first start that he wanted more balance in the offense. You know, Quinn's in there. You got a 60% early down pass rate. However, probably even more than that in that UTSA game before he went down. And with Arch, you probably were a little bit below 55%. So you had more balance. Now, that makes perfect sense and that's reasonable. But when you don't have depth at running back, you know, do you want to put that, do you want to overburden a position that's already been dealing with a ton of injuries? And that's going to be, I think, the question, right? Do you it depends on, do you overburden that position? And by the way, that is also a weakness for Mississippi State. They're one of the worst rush defenses in college football. Only 10 defenses out there are worse at stopping the run than Mississippi State. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think you supplement the run game with some of the things you talked about there, Bobby, the screen game. Even Sark talked about earlier this week, he wants to get more of the screen game involved, right? He has one of the most sophisticated screen packages out there. We didn't see a lot of those bubble screens, the tunnel screens, the smoke routes to the wide receivers. So maybe that's an extension of that running game too. Obviously the screen game with the running backs. We haven't seen many tight end screens. Sark loves a tight end screen, had 4 of them during the spring game alone. Maybe we see the tight end screen is something that's implemented back into the offense a little bit. And maybe the actual wide receiver run game. I'm talking about just handing off the ball to wide receivers in those condensed compressed sets on end arounds, on reverses. They've been really successful so far, right? You had a 55-yarder to Ryan Wingo, and I believe you had a 25-yarder to Isaiah Bond, if I'm not mistaken. Why not a little bit more? I was looking at Marquise Goodwin, who just went into the Hall of Fame. I was looking at his stats the other day. You realize this dude had 45 rushes in his career at Texas? He used to get damn near a rush. It was like damn near every game. I remember him getting like an end around or a run of some kind. It might be time to start to dial up the actual wide receiver run game. And I think you got 2 guys that are good at it. I think Bond can be really good at it with the ball in his hands, a yak daddy. I think Wingo is a yak daddy. And I think Silas Bolden could be one of those yak daddies too. So I think those 3 guys maybe start trying to implement maybe 1 or 2 wide receiver runs per game, something like that.
That's what I was seeing too. All right, we need to give our predictions. My bookie has the line right at 38.5, 62.5 points overall. That looks like that basically means 52 to 10 is what that is. 52 to 12. Where are you guys coming out? I'll give you mine. I went ahead and said, okay, I have not predicted Texas in the 50s at all this entire year, by the way. So that means I've been wrong 3 times. I'm putting Texas in the 50s, so they better hold up. I'm going 52 to 10. Longhorns over Mississippi State. CJ, I'll let you go next. We'll finish up with Rod.
Well, that makes me want to go in the 40s, Bobby. I'm not going to lie. So,
no, I'm surprising. You probably should.
I'm sticking with the 50s trend. I like it. I have 55 to 7. I think that Mississippi State finds a touchdown again. They're SEC caliber players as well. So to keep them out of the end zone, maybe a tall task, even on the second quarterback. But right now, I don't think it'll be a close game. I think you'll see Trey Owens at some point early in that fourth quarter. 55-7. Lock it in.
Rodney, what do you think, buddy?
I'm gonna go with, like you guys, in the 50s. Their defense is really bad. I'll give them credit. I think they are gonna score a little bit. So maybe I'll give them, I don't know if I'm gonna give them 13 points. Maybe I'll give them 9 points. I'll say no touchdown. We settle for field goals. Red zone defense steps up. So 9 points for them. We'll go 52-9. There you go. 52-9.
Man, Rod, I'm 52-10, dude.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. I'll go 49-9. I'll go 49.
I talked him into it. That way you're in the 40s instead of the 50s, right?
Yeah.
That way. I love it. I wanted to say this about that game too. That the one thing that I'm thinking about is like a subtext or subplot. This is a Mississippi State team that will try to be a power run team, much like Michigan. We haven't seen that really much with quality players. ULM tried to do that a little bit, but they just didn't have the offensive line. Michigan's the only other team that Texas has faced that have really tried to handle the power run. So Texas defense going to have to show they can handle that power run. All right, let's move on, guys, if you don't mind, and get into the SEC segment. Got several big games, starting with the guys over in Alabama. They are headed to Tuscaloosa, Georgia, that is. I want to say this segment sponsored by our friends at MyBookie. With all the excitement of this season, make sure you're in the game with MyBookie. Bet any matchup, hundreds of college player props, and take advantage of weekly risk-free bets. The best part is you can do it all, anytime, anywhere, straight from your phone. Visit mybookie.ag. Use promo code ONTexas to get started. It's MyBookie's 10th year anniversary, and they're rolling out the red carpet for bettors. Bet big and bet confident with risk-free Thursdays. If your boosted bet doesn't hit, you'll get your money back. Weekly, no sweat, win-win bets all season long. And now sign up using my OnTexas code to cash in on a double deposit bonus. It's a no-brainer. Double the cash in your account before you even place your first bet, but do not wait on it because it's only available for a limited time. For those of you who've been playing with MyBookie, they've got something for you too, a brand new loyalty rewards program in MyBookie Plus. It's simple. The more you play, the more you earn. And as you progress through the tiers, unlock exclusive promotions, epic giveaways, and cash in your account. Again, that's mybookie.ag. Use promo code ONTexas. Thank you for your sponsorship of the Saturday Conversation and On Texas Football. All right, big game, national, that has national income implications. If we wake up on Sunday, guys, and Texas isn't number one, it's going to be because Georgia or Bama looked dominant.
Yep.
That's the only way I think Texas doesn't end up number one on Sunday is if Georgia or Bama look dominant. Georgia goes to Tuscaloosa. Of course, the hurricane is going to have an impact here, whether it's travel, what have you, just overall atmosphere of the game. Bama underdogs in their own house, 2 points. So it's really a pick 'em game, 48.5 point over under. Who do y'all like in this game? Because I could see this thing going multiple directions. Of course, last year, Georgia and some of their players have to be smarting from the loss in the SEC championship game that kept them out of the college football playoffs. Jalen Milroe, though, is back, and he's the one that led Alabama to that championship. And I think they have a better offensive coach at the helm right now in Kalen DeBoer. Maybe not the defensive mastery as Nick Saban, but they may have a better offensive coach. Y'all have a feel for this on game day here? Either one of you? CJ, you look like you're chomping at the bit to get going. Go for it.
Alabama as a home underdog for the first time since 2007. I know Saban's not there, but sign me up for that. I don't know how often you're going to see that, and it's still Alabama. They still got a lot of talent. They still have a lot of five-star caliber guys. They're also very healthy, right? No guys listed as out, no guys listed as doubtful. You look at Georgia, Michaela Williams, questionable. Tate Ratledge, star center or interior offensive lineman, out. London Humphreys, wide receiver from Vanderbilt, out. So there's guys that they're going to be dinged up at. I also look at, where these teams have struggled at this year, and a 13-12 victory over Kentucky for Georgia, that offense isn't as explosive, right? I mentioned it earlier this week. They're missing Ladd McConkey. They're missing Brock Bowers. They're missing the guys right now that can get open down the field and can create after the catch. And you might be sitting there thinking, well, it's still Georgia. Shouldn't they still have guys? They do. They've just not found that consistency and rhythm that we saw over the past few years with those two. So right now I have to lean, like you said, Bobby, I mean, you have the offensive mastermind in Kalen DeBoer. You're going to see Jalen Milroe get loose, and you're going to see the 17-year-old Ryan Williams have a big day because that's all he's been able to do so far as a college athlete. At home, too, I really like Alabama. The one thing that could muddy this up, and you mentioned the weather, if that game is yucky, if it's rainy, if it's windy, whatever, if it gets ugly, that's where I start to lean Georgia a little bit because I do think their front seven defensively has more star power. With that said, and if it's not ugly weather, I'm leaning all day towards Alabama taking the victory at home.
What about you, Rod B?
Yeah, I mean, it really is a very intriguing matchup. I think I'm leaning right now towards Alabama. It's more about the Alabama defense. Jalen Milroe is going to be a playmaker at quarterback. We'll see if Kirby Smart can speed him up. He did a great job in the SEC title game last year, basically speeding up the internal clock of Jalen Milroe. Texas did a really good job of it too. You speed up that internal clock, and then you force him to have to get rid of the football, work through his progressions quicker if he's even going through any progressions. His average time to throw is over 3 seconds, and his average depth of target is 12.5 yards downfield. He's going deep. And same thing last year. I remember you talked about it, CJ, before the college football playoff. Same thing last year. He was chunking it deep downfield. That's something that's kind of in his DNA as a quarterback, and he holds on to the ball. But you can force him to speed up his clock like he did against Texas. And that's what Kirby Smart did in the SEC title game. He had his worst passing performance. His two worst passing performances of the year were Texas and that Georgia game. We're playing Georgia in the SEC title game is because both defense did a really good job of speeding up his internal clock. That's something to watch out for. So they blitzed him a lot. They blitzed him like 48% of the time in the SEC title game. So watch the high blitz rate for Georgia in this matchup and watch that Alabama secondary. Guys, that secondary is damn good. I'll give you a stat. They've allowed just 3 passes of at least 15 yards this season. That's it. They're averaging 2.89 yards per coverage snap. That's the best in the country by nearly a half a yard. And they've allowed the 3rd lowest percentage of first downs and touchdowns in the nation via the pass. That secondary can go. And I don't know, and you talked about it, I don't know if Georgia's got the skill position talent on the outside to be able to threaten Bama. Bama believes they probably can match up easily on the outside with these guys. And lines of scrimmage is pretty much a push for these teams. I mean, Bama and Georgia, lines of scrimmage, they got dogs there. And Jalen Milroe could be the X factor because he can operate off schedule, play breaks down, also be a threat in the running game and the passing game. Right now I'm leaning Bama more because of that defense. And like you said, I said, Kalen DeBoer, people underrate Kalen DeBoer, man. That gives a top 5 coach in college football. And they will see in this matchup. He's out-coached Sark twice. That ain't easy to do. Because we know Sark right now is in the conversation for one of the best coaches in college football. That dude can coach. So I'm leaning Bama right now.
I think Georgia's really feeling the absence of Ra Thomas, the wide receiver who was dismissed. Again, I just don't know right now who they rely on in the passing game, and that's a big issue so far.
Yep. Yeah, Landon Humphrey's also out. You mentioned that, the transfer from Vandy with mono. They've had attrition because of some off-field issues as well with the race cars, etc. over at Georgia. Maybe Kirby Smart is getting chipped away at, so to speak, with his depth, right? That can happen, especially when Alabama, like y'all said, is very healthy. I will mention this. I know people say that maybe Georgia's running back group is the best in the country. Give me Alabama's. Jam Miller and Justice Haynes. Those two guys, really, really talented. And you mix in Jalen Milroe and the threat of his run, it opens up just a little more space for their running backs. I think you're good. We're going to go 3 for 3. We're all picking Alabama, it sounds like. I think the Crimson Tide roll. And remember, this could be a situation where whoever wins could jump Texas in the polls. All right, next game. This one, a line according to my bookie. Arkansas A&M in Jerry World. It's the 2:30 ESPN game. Aggies right now favored by 4. I explained this in the Coffee and Football segment this week. I think this is a directional game. And what I mean by that is this. You win this game if you're Arkansas or A&M. You lose this game if you're Arkansas A&M. It tells you which way your program, it tells you the direction of your program. You win, you're ascending. You lose, you're going down because you're down a peg in the SEC pecking order, essentially. Would y'all agree with that? Because this is do or die year for Sam Pittman. It's the first year out of the gate for Mike Elko, and he kind of stumbled at the start, right? But he's trying to right the ship. Switched up quarterbacks. What are y'all's thoughts here on A&M Arkansas?
Rod, you want it? Because I got some thoughts.
Go for it, CJ. Let CJ go. If CJ's chopping at the mid, let him go.
This game needs to be a home and home first and foremost. Get it out of AT&T, put it back on a college campus, let the fans have the atmosphere and enjoy it that way. But to the game itself, let me get that out of the way. I like what I've seen so far from Petrino's offense with Tailgate Green, right? There's a reason why they first recruited him out of high school. It was the first offer. They wanted him out of Boise State. They've been moving the ball, and you have the argument that they should be 4-0, right? They had 650 yards against Oklahoma State on the road, and because of turnovers and short fields, they squandered that game in overtime. It was an ugly game at Auburn. I think ugly games at Auburn are going to be pretty common. We're going to talk about that with Oklahoma coming up. But for that reason, they've been road tested already this year, whereas you look at some of the success and failures that Florida's had. I know that they went to Florida and they won in the swamp. They're still working through some of the kinks with Marcel Reed, right? I think that they still have some of that lack of cohesion with that offense at the moment, and moving from Connor Wegman to Marcel Reed, it's going to take time. Also with that offensive line, it's not given a lot of time. You don't have the playmakers down the field like an Andrew Armstrong or even a Jaquindon Jackson right now in the backfield. So I like the Arkansas offense a lot in this game. At Cowboy Stadium, I think you're going to see a lot of points. That's kind of what that stadium does. It produces points, especially, if you're a Cowboys fan, you see teams running up the score on the ground game all the time. But to this game, I like Arkansas. I like the points. I like the over. I think that you're going to see Tailgate Green running free, and I think that you're going to see the Pigs come away with the win as long as there's not another oink-doink situation.
Rod B, oink-doink. Rod B, what do you think, buddy?
No, I'll tell you why. The Aggies right now are running the football really well. I think they're a top 10 running team in college football. But that's pretty much that's the only way they can win offensively, right? Move the football, because they just haven't been able to prove that they can be a proficient passing team. So I agree. Even though Tailgate Green's is completing less than 60% of his passes, he has the opportunity and the potential for the big play downfield. The explosive play downfield with his arm, because he's got a cannon of an arm. He's big. So I actually like Jaquindon Jackson in the backfield with Tailgate Green. Jaquindon Jackson's balling, by the way, guys. He's averaging almost 7 yards per rush. Mm-hmm. It's crazy, freaky numbers, man. He's got 8 touchdowns. Tailgate Green's actually got 8 touchdowns, over 1,200 total yards. So I agree. I think they offer more variety and more ways to win with Arkansas. I think for A&M is pretty limited. Got to play good, hard-nosed defense, and you better be able to run the ball effective. If they can't do that, they're not going to win. And by the way, the Arkansas rush defense, pretty damn good. It's a top 20 rush defense. It's not bad at all. They're allowing less than 83 rushing yards per game. So I think that's something that Arkansas is going to be able to lean a bit on. If they can stop the run, that's a strength. So you got a strength on a strength that can end up canceling each other out. If that's the case, how is A&M going to move the ball? That's what I'm concerned with if I'm A&M. So I think I'm leaning Arkansas with you guys. I think Arkansas can run the ball. I think it gets explosive plays in the passing game. And I like Jaquindon Jackson, man. I think he's underrated as a runner right now. He's one of the best runners in the country. He's balling. Yeah.
I got to say this. You mentioned turnovers. I think turnovers from either quarterback are going to probably play key. That's been the case with this game often. To your point, CJ, earlier. A&M favored by 4, according to my book. Yeah, I'm going with A&M here, guys. I think Arkansas is – I don't know that they're ready for prime time on the offensive or defensive line. I do think that A&M does have a little bit of an issue also in their run game. They're without T.J. Shanahan, another one of their starting offensive linemen. That means they've lost 2 now on an offensive line that isn't real great in the first place. But I just, for whatever reason, I think A&M has a little voodoo over Arkansas. I mean, it just seems to be the case. I was going to go back to that Georgia-Bama game. I didn't make this point. I said turnovers might be important in the Arkansas A&M game and always have been. If Jalen Milroe turns the ball over against Georgia, that's to your point about the accelerated clock in his brain with Jalen Milroe, Rod. I would say that. I agree with that as well. All right, other game we want to get to here, Auburn hosting Oklahoma. The Sooners are without their top 5 wide receivers, it looks like. Top 5. They've got Texas running back problems just at wide receiver. They are still favored, however, over Auburn while they're starting a new quarterback, while they have their top 5 receivers out. How bad is – I mean, Paul Feinbaum's talking about Mississippi State being epically bad. How bad is Auburn for OU to still be favored? This is the 2:30 game on ABC. Rod, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, it's going to be a game to find out how good of a coach Brent Venables is, right? Because I always say coaches are problem solvers. So it's your job to figure out how to solve the problem, come up with solutions. He's got a lot of problems, and I don't know if he's got enough solutions.
He spent 55 minutes at a microphone, an unreasonably long press conference, right? Because I think, Rod, to your point, he's got a lot of problems. And he's got to talk about them all, right?
Yeah, he even admitted that they were asking him about Dylan Gabriel, and when hey, did you regret letting him go? He said, "Hey, man, we didn't let him go. He left." He basically admitted, like, no, he left us. All right, he
convenient explanation. I'm just gonna say that.
Yeah, I was like, whatever. My point is, times is desperate times for the Oklahoma Sooners right now, and I think they're on the cusp of an offensive identity crisis. If they win this game, they'll be doing it with defense. They're going to do it with the defensive side of the ball, and their defense is still one of the better defenses in the country, especially in the back seven, are really opportunistic. Oh, man, this is you know what? I'll go with Oklahoma in this game, but I'm curious how they pull it out, like how it looks, because I don't know how it's going to look with the O-line issues they got, the quarterback issues they got. They got some injuries on defense now that are going to, I think, maybe having a negative effect on their defensive effectiveness. I just think it's going to look ugly, but I'll give Oklahoma the win here because I don't like Auburn.
To your point, the Auburn quarterback likes to throw it to the other team. And OU's pretty good at turnovers. I mean, he really likes to throw it to the other team. CJ,
that's the big thing to me. You look at, does either side of the ball have an elite facet? And the only one that I lean to right now is Oklahoma's defense. Yep. Auburn's not that great of a football team. They're also dealing with some injuries of themselves. You know, star freshman Cam Coleman's been dealing with a bit of a shoulder this year. It's not great, like you said, Bobby, when Hank Brown and Peyton Thorne are throwing the football to the other team. You look at that Arkansas game a week ago, it was a mess. 4 turnovers, 4 interceptions, and add in a fumble on the Auburn offense. Hugh Freeze talked about it on the SEC teleconference. He said, I don't really know what to do. And for that reason, I mean, defense travels. I think to your point about, the Texas-Michigan game being the first to 17 or the first to 20 will win that game. I think you look at this game as the first to 14 will come away with the victory. It's going to be ugly. Neither offense is very talented. Neither offense has a lot of playmakers. But right now, at least you saw some playmaking ability if you're an OU fan from Michael Hawkins. And that's something that Auburn, frankly, just doesn't have at all.
I'm going with OU as well. I think that they just – look, they have a semblance of a team. Auburn's in desperation mode right now, even though this game is at home and is going to be that kind of rally the troops. I don't know that they'll do it against OU. You mentioned that first to 14, the over-under of this game is 45.5, which is really, really low. Really, really low. All right, a couple more SEC games I just want to mention briefly. Then we'll get to the one game that we're going to talk about from out of conference. Kentucky goes to Ole Miss. Ole Miss looking really good. They're favored by 17.5, according to my bookie, over under of 53. South Alabama, Major Applewhite returns home to Baton Rouge, where he's originally from, playing in Death Valley. This is by the way, they play LSU. This is the game that immediately follows Texas on the SEC network too. So once the Texas game be over, if you keep it on the same channel, you can see that one. LSU favored by 22. I don't know which direction we're going to go there. All right, let's talk a little bit now about a national game. We talked about a couple of different ones. Illinois Penn State has some interest to us and it's a weird one to have interest in. We realize that going into it. Illinois, though, is ranked 19th in the country. Penn State is ranked 9. Penn State favored by 18. Our question to each one of us is, the reason why we picked this one and circled it is because we want to know if Penn State's for real.
Yep.
Right? Are they going to be in this top 5, 6 conversation, or are they really a top 15, top 20 team? What do y'all think about this going into the game? Don't worry about the point spread. Just tell me whether or not you think, from what you've seen, Penn State belongs in this national championship type picture.
They've looked good so far. And I think the big question for Penn State would, how would Drew Aller take that next step? I think so far that he has. This will be a good test, right? Illinois is not your typical top 20 team in the country. However, they're off to a solid start. For Penn State, that hurdle has always been beating the Ohio States, the Michigans, right? You can add Oregon into that conversation now that the conference has expanded, but you get a great test right now. And to be favored in the teens over a top 20 team, I think that's going to show you whether or not you can put some stock back into Penn State before they inevitably break your heart later on this year. But right now, I like what I've seen from that team, even after a scare from Bowling Green. I think I'm going to get hurt again, Bobby. I'm buying back into Penn State. I want to believe in them, but we know how this ends.
James Franklin is king of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. What do you think about Penn State this year, Rod?
I like James Franklin, and I like the talent at Penn State. They're always loaded. You look at the NFL,
really
they're always tons of guys drafted. He's just not a big game coach. And like I said, I'm a fan of James Franklin. I like him. Just coming from a guy that likes James Franklin, I'm telling you, he is not very good in big games. He just that's been
he turtles, yes. Rod.
He does. The hope is that Colton-Nicky now added to the mix there as the OC, the brilliant offensive coordinator from Kansas, and maybe now there's a new mojo in big game. Now, is this a big game? I don't know. I mean, Illinois is ranked.
Yeah, I agree. Good point.
I don't know if it's a big game. So they may be great in this game, but is that a big game? You just pointed out, CJ. Your Ohio States and your when you play Michigan, when you play top 10 teams, those are the big games for Penn State. So I don't trust James Franklin in big games, but I like his program. I do.
Okay, good stuff. All right, hey, we'll see if they're big time ready. That's the real question with them. It's not so much this individual game. The reason we wanted to bring them up, are they big time ready? A couple of 11 o'clock games, by the way, that we'll be keeping an eye on before the Texas game. Oklahoma State goes to Kansas State. Kansas State favored by 5. Baylor hosts BYU. And according to this is the surprising one. According to my bookie, Baylor favored by 3.5, which makes no sense to me. BYU's undefeated right now.
They know something.
Something may be up there to your point. But the last one I want to mention, and this is the Mac Brown Bowl. North Carolina and Duke. Manny Diaz, who was fired by Mac Brown, is the head coach. Fired on the tarmac following the BYU game several years ago, is the head coach at Duke. Malik Murphy, obviously the quarterback for Duke, going up against a Mac Brown team that gave up 70 last week. James Madison. Now, I will say this, Duke actually favored by 2.5, which is surprising.
I think that makes sense, Bobby. You can't allow 70 to James Madison.
They scored 50, though. I mean, I don't think Duke can score 50 against St. Francis.
It's probably a good point. This game, it's unfortunate because it should have been the Texas backup versus the Texas A&M backup bowl from a year ago with Max Johnson at North Carolina. Unfortunately, he's out for the year, but this will be a fun game, right? Texas ties on both sides. We'll see, if adjustments were made. If you're Mac Brown's defense, otherwise, it could be another long day for the Fighting Tar Heels.
Yeah, it's. I will say this: that quarterback from James Madison, he had like a Heisman-esque performance in that game. Mac, I will say Mac has his guys ready for using for games like this, though. Where you're counting Mac out, he does have a tag, but when you count him out, you're like, man, Mac's done. But right.
It's like after the OU game.
Yes, he was. Yeah. Yes, you remember these, but I'd be like, Mac's done. You're like, how the hell did Mac do it? Even his last year in Texas, remember, like, Mac's got no shot, and he ends up playing basically for the Big 12 title toward the end of the year. Mac just has a knack for that when he's down and out, so I wouldn't doubt it. They made it really, really competitive and really interesting. This is Mac's last hurrah. I'm pretty sure this is it for him. at 73, and he wants to go out at least on a respectable note.
Gotcha. All right. Hey, game day coverage for us today. This Saturday conversation brought to you by our friends at MyBookie. Then we have the Texas Tailgate, South Point Dodge, Hargrove Roofing, going to be out there. Make sure you stop by Duck Camp, also giving away a $200 gift certificate at the tailgate. All you have to do is come by, stop by the tailgate to hang out with us a little bit, and then watch with us. Starts at 3 o'clock. Aaron Hogan has a call. Flat Creek Estate, Viking Fence. Post-game live, our friends over at Flight by Yingling. Really good stuff. They'll also be out at the tailgate serving a little Flight beer for us as well. So come on and stop by. That's our game day coverage. Rod, myself will be doing post-game along with Brian Robeson. It should be some fun. CJ and Jerry working with me on the Texas Tailgate. They're going to be out there looking for recruits as well. Pre-game should be a good one in DKR today. Longhorns favored by 38.5. Look, Longhorns got to get it going, guys. They got to make it happen. This is a way to 5-0. They get there. They're in the catbird seat with a week off to get healthy, get ready for OU Georgia. Bing, bing, right back to back. That's right. You couldn't ask for a better situation.
No.
You win today and go into next week with an off week to get healthy. You really couldn't. So it's all there in front of them. They got to make it happen. It starts today against Mississippi State, who's starting a true freshman quarterback. All right, for CJ Vogel and Rod Babers, I'm Bobby Burton. That's been this edition of the Saturday Conversation. We appreciate you guys. Check us out later today. We've got all kinds of game day coverage. Guys, thanks also to our producer, Matt Hutchinson, behind the scenes. Hook 'em.